Hi, everyone. It's Cynthia. Welcome to the God Place. It's Tuesday, so we have our friend Victoria Reynolds here with us today. I love to talk with Victoria. I just love the stuff that comes out of her. She's very tuned in. So before we start our conversation, I'd like to talk about something that I've known for a long time, but I don't completely understand. And I believe that Victoria is going to give us insight on this. Einstein said there's no such thing as coincidence. And I love that. That's just God. He said that's God being anonymous. Now, the other thing that Einstein said is that we're in parallel timelines, that there's no such thing as time. Now, we as human beings, we understand a 3D world, the now, the past, and the present. And we also understand here, there, and the space in between. So we're very, very 3D. But essentially, our true essence is much, much higher than that. And I think the game of life is discovering that part of us that is multidimensional, that is one with God, which is peace, love, joy, and vibrates in that energy. That's what we really are. But we're 3D beings trying to figure that out. So Victoria and I were just talking about how there are different timelines. And right now we are aware of two timelines happening at the same time. So Victoria, why don't you explain to our friends what that means? Because right now, one thing that we need to understand is that there are predictions being made all the time. And then when they don't work out, we get very, very disappointed. But maybe in another timeline, they are happening the way that they say they're happening. Why don't you take it from here, Victoria, and explain this to our
Well,
listeners?
timelines are really interesting. They're really kind of difficult to grasp because they're not, for starters, they're not really lines.
Right.
As we know, time is a construct that was created as a way of measuring. It's a way of making sense of our reality. So it's a concept that was created for measuring this human experience. So time is actually a field, not a line. That's my understanding. It's an energetic field. And we have our individual timelines and we have collective timelines. And there can be many of them existing at the same time. My understanding is that a couple of years ago, we were able to limit it down to just two. So there were many of them happening at the same time. As I said, individual timelines and also collective timelines. One of the things that's interesting is that I was told that when CERN started up in 2012, that CERN created a bunch of new timelines.
Okay.
So, and I actually interviewed someone I had a conversation with someone a couple of years ago who has been to other timelines. There are other timelines
Yes.
where Armageddon did happen and humanity was completely wiped out.
Yes.
So we've managed in this timeline to avoid that, right? And so we're now down to these two timelines. I call them the Ascension timeline and the Descension timeline. Add your label to it. The Ascension timeline is the betterment of humanity, the new earth, golden age, sovereignty, 5D, heaven on earth timeline. The other timeline, which is almost, they look like mirror images of each other, which is why they're really, really hard for people to recognize.
Right.
Because they look on the surface very similar. The Descension timeline uses a lot of the same terminology. It knows how to use our loving language to make it look like what I call fear disguised as love. So that's why they're using terms like, if you really love humanity, you'll do this. If you don't do it, then you really don't care about other people. So you see how they're using words, and one of the ways to be able to recognize it is that if they use the terms if then. There's a condition attached to it. Conditions are fear-based. So it's a really, when you start looking at conditions, and then it's a lot easier to start to decipher the difference between the two, because love is unconditional, fear is conditional. So it's a really quick and easy way to be able to decipher the difference. So right now we're down to these two timelines, and they're running side by side. They were intertwined, and we've kind of been able to separate them. So we're running on two different tracks. And the one track is what I call the New World Order, totalitarian, fear-based dissension timeline. That's the timeline that the controllers want to take humanity down, because they believe that human beings are not capable of making decisions for themselves. So they're using, we're going to create peace on earth, but we're going to create peace on earth through force. We're going to create peace on earth through fear. So the idea is that they can eliminate through controls, you know, the chips, if you will, that eventually the extent is turning us into humanoids rather than humans, makes us completely controllable. And it's also no crime, because if the government knows that you're going to have it always has an eye on you, right? Big Brother always has an eye on you, then you're not going to commit a crime. They can force peace on earth through control, in the belief that only some people have the intellect to be able to make the decisions for everyone else. Everyone else is sheep, and we're just not smart enough. But I had this insight about it this morning, so it's interesting you bringing this up, because the insight that came in this morning is that the reason human beings are now not smart enough to make our decisions for ourselves is specifically because of the programming we've been taught in our education system that dumbed us down to not be able to make decisions for ourselves. So there are a group of people who consider themselves to be elite, to be more worthy and more deserving to control humanity. So they have this timeline plan, the 2021 plan, and there's the 2030 agenda to kind of corral human beings into this particular direction. And you see it in the movies. There's no secret to it. It's not a secret plan. You watch all the dystopian movies, they'll tell you exactly what they have planned, because of the prime directive of free will choice. They have to tell us in advance what their plans are. And when they tell us in advance what their plans are, because we are all creators, all made in the image of divine creator, we create our reality, and we have the ability, by watching their movies and the stories they tell us, to actually create the vision they put in front of us. So they know how powerful the human mind is at creating our reality. So they feed us the vision. That's why it's called television. They feed us the vision, we visualize it, and because we visualize it, we actually create it. Now, we need to get, I feel like I've been preaching to the choir for the last 2 years about this. We are the ones we've been waiting for, people. We've been saying this for decades. Now we're at the point of emergency. We are the ones who are going to save humanity from this collective dark night of the soul, from this collective dissension of reality. Now, it's not about saving humanity, because we all have to work together as one humanity. We have to bridge the divide between the supposed different groups and all come together in one place of love that says, hey, we're not going to allow this to be the reality. When enough of us get together and create a new vision, stop buying into the vision they're trying to feed us through this dissension reality, we create a new vision of what we know is possible. This is the other timeline that they're trying to hide from us, because they lose all their control in this other timeline. I've been shown this other timeline. I just finally finished writing my book, Metatron's Cube, where Metatron shows me, he is the scribe of Earth, the scribe of God. He's showing me what the future looks like. This other timeline is a timeline where all of us have our own sovereignty, all of us make our own decisions, and we have peace on earth because when we are in our heart space and we make our decisions from love rather than fear, it's impossible to harm another being. It's absolutely impossible. Peace on earth exists because we have absolutely no interest in anything that is not that. And that reality is what we call the heaven on earth reality, the new earth reality, 5D, ascension, peace and freedom. Again, pick a label. It's where we ascend into this new reality that is 100% based in love. All choices are based in love. The other reality that's trying to be created is all based entirely in fear, where love ceases to exist. And it's all fear-based. Right now, the reality we're in is primarily fear-based, but love still exists, and love is still trying to fight for its right in this existence. And a lot of us know that, and we're going into our heart space, and we are keeping love alive in our hearts so that we don't get completely sucked into this 100% fear-based reality that they're attempting to take us down there. Literally everything that's been happening on the planet the last 2 years is attacking the heart. Right? The V and V, if you will, attack the heart specifically, so that our hearts don't work properly, so that we can't create this love-based reality. We have to stay out of fear, and we have to stay in loving the divine love, the infinite love, the unconditional, pure love of source, knowing that we are actually anchoring that inside our own hearts. We are the light of God in every one of us. When enough of us remember that, we will envision and we will create this other timeline that is wanting to emerge inside every single one of us. Yes, each of us have our own unique timeline, and we also have a collective timeline. Collectively, we choose which one of those we are going to take. So if you think about time as an energetic field rather than a line, you kind of see how it's plot point here, 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 here. It's not a line. It's like this, right? This happens, then any number of other things can happen. And then any number of other things can happen from that. There are 8 billion of us, nearly 8 billion of us. Every single thought we have, every action, every belief is affecting how time plays out in our reality. It's not a line. It is an experience being experienced by close to 8 billion of us. And every single one of us affect this time-space continuum, this time field, how this plot point plays out to any number of other plot points. It's up to us. So if you think about, if you were to take it to just down 2 timelines, on the Ascension timeline, there are all these different plot points, and the decisions we make affect which one of those plot points play out. And the Ascension timeline, the same thing. Every thought and belief and action we have affects how each one of those plot points play out. That's why we have to be impeccable, impeccable with our words, impeccable with our thoughts, impeccable with our beliefs, impeccable with our actions. We have to stay in absolute love and integrity in all things. That's how we dismantle that other paradigm. We, again, our ability to create and to envision will be what dissolves that other timeline so that it cannot play out in our collective reality. When enough of us recognize it and we say, yeah, I'm not going to play along with that. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create this, because this is where my heart is calling me. This is where spirit is calling me. I'm not going to buy into that reality. I see this wanting to play out over here, but every single one of us have the ability through our heart space to actually disengage and discharge that other timeline. We can actually make it melt into the nothingness from whence it came by our own resonance. So this video that came out talking about the 2 different timelines, when enough of us understand that there is this other dissension timeline that's trying to play out, we actually can discharge it. They won't be able to play out when enough of us recognize, oh, I see that plot point. Yeah, we're not going to let that happen because we're going to expose it. It can't happen if it gets exposed. Which is why everybody's being told to share this video. It isn't about being afraid of this thing that's going to happen on the 18th. It's about saying, I see that over there. It can't be a surprise if enough people know about it. We actually dismantle that plan. That particular plot point gets dissolved because too many of us know about it. So it's up to us, excuse me, in our hearts to dismantle that other timeline
I think Jesus,
and create the world we want to create.
I think Jesus was a preview to coming attractions and the potential of what we have. Let's talk about that. Tell me about that. Yahshua.
Yahshua. Yeah, he was an example of what all of us are capable of. He embodied the Holy Trinity, the Mother, Father, Child, more than any other being on the planet. And he wanted to show all of us what we're all capable of when we remember that we are the embodiment of that. And when we hold ourselves up into a higher vibration of that Holy Trinity of Father, Mother, Child. And that, and he even said, he said, do you not remember that you are all God? We're all one with God. He said, in the ancient scriptures, it talked about how we were all one with God. And he was trying to remind people of that. And he said, we are all, let your light shine for all the world to see. Don't put your light under a bushel. Be the, and Buddha said, be the change you want to see in the world. And so they were all teaching the same thing, which is that we are all the light and we are all the way. And Yeshua was saying that we're all capable of this and so much more. And his message got twisted and dismantled by the men that built religion in his name. And a lot of his message got twisted into fear. And that's why it's so difficult, again, to decipher, because it's fear disguised as love.
And right, and playing on our self-esteem, like letting you know that you're a worthless little worm, right? And that was not Jesus's intention at all. He was giving an opposite message of that, but the powers that be didn't want that to be exposed.
Well, they want to keep us all small and voiceless and feeling unworthy and broken. And as long as they can keep us feeling unworthy and broken, we can't remember our own true worth as divine beings having a human experience. That source is sourced through every single one of us. Source, God, whatever label we have for the divine, for the one that creates all things, right? And that when we remember that we are all one with that, then we remember our true power, because the power of God is sourced through every single one of us. But as long as they can keep us small and disempowered and forgetting our true source, and keeping us disconnected from the divine, which is what a lot of our religions do, is they actually create this veil of separation between our selves and our higher selves, our spiritual selves, our higher dimensional beings. A part of us is connected straight with the divine, that our religions actually create that veil of separation. And the veil is actually an illusion. It's fear. And as soon as we start to recognize that love, and we carry that love within ourselves, that illusion of separation starts to melt. And it's interesting, the visual I was getting about a week ago is that the veil has been pierced. That's why so many people are starting to wake up and see what's really happening in the world. And what I started seeing is a veil being shredded, and then a couple of days ago of it being burned so that it can never be recreated. It's being burned up. So humanity is going to be experiencing this baptism by fire because the veil is being burned up. So this is not going to be easy for humanity to experience. But what it's doing is it's activating the fire within our hearts too, which isn't a bad thing. But the baptism by fire means that every person on earth is going to see the corruption that's been playing out. And that's going to be really, really painful for people to understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And fire opens up the seeds of new possibilities. It is a tool for transformation when we understand what it's capable of. And what's interesting, I'm remembering all of a sudden one of the prophecies I grew up with was that Earth would be turned to a sea of glass. And it's interesting. I grew up with like every prophecy under the sun. I can just like count them off. So speaking of which, so one of the prophecies that I grew up with, speaking of this video, this April 18th video, one of the other prophecies I grew up with was that China would invade the West Coast and Russia would invade the East Coast, and that there would be an invasion from the South.
Wow. Okay.
And then
of the
United States, okay. Yes, specifically the United States under attack. So for me, when I was looking at all this a couple of years ago, it's like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense on an energetic. So the invasion from the South is what's been happening on our southern border.
Right.
Of just people flooding our country. Mm-hmm. And to the degree that it can't be stopped. We have an invasion going on. The Russian invasion has to do with our technology.
Right.
And the Chinese invasion has to do with our economy.
Okay.
So we're experiencing it.
Right.
It's just more on a metaphysical level, so a lot of people don't recognize it. We're in the middle of World War III right now. It's an information war. It's a battle that's going on within the human hearts. So it's not as obvious because there aren't guns and weapons and missiles and shooting and all that stuff. Although the contrast that Ascension Timeline is trying to turn it into a physical war. Mm-hmm. When enough of us understand that that does not have to be the case, mm-hmm. we can de-energize it. Right. So the other prophecy I was just seeing is one that I grew up with, being told that the earth would be turned to a sea of glass, which I find really interesting for two reasons. One, those of us in the spiritual community have been saying for a while that the planet is becoming a crystalline planet rather than carbon-based. Her body is actually changing to being crystalline-based. All of us, human beings and all life on earth, we're actually shifting from carbon to crystalline as well. That's why so many people are feeling these ascension symptoms or the ascension flu and headaches and back pains and things like that. It's because we are actually changing. Our light bodies are being activated. Our multidimensional bodies are being activated, which is really uncomfortable for the physical vessel, which is carbon-based, but it's because we are shifting to crystalline-based. And inactive DNA is being activated. Our spiritual gifts are being activated. Right. These gamma waves are coming in and they're activating our dormant DNA. What science calls junk DNA is actually inactive divine human DNA.
Isn't that, I always think in terms of music. And mm-hmm. there was a song, we are stardust, we are golden, we mm-hmm. are billion-year-old carbon. Mm-hmm. And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden.
Yes, and that's exactly what's happening. And that getting back to the garden is the ascension timeline. And there are some of us who know that's what we're going back to. Exactly. This is one of the most beautiful planets in the universe.
Absolutely. And this is something
which is why the darkness wants to control it, because this is beautiful. This place is paradise.
It really, and it was the Vietnam War that stimulated all of the baby boomers. And the baby boomer generation is a phenomenal in itself. And it's been described as the pig and the python, right? Mm. So you have the python and you have this humongous group of people, which were born between 1944 in 1964. These are the baby boomers. And what happened when we became teenagers, before we understood what money was and responsibilities, that type of thing, we were going into our adult bodies, the hormones, everything. So we were at that free love kind of place. And then we got degrees and marriages and children and all that other stuff, and got a little distracted. But right now I'm on a campaign, Victoria, to go back to that place where we were then and understand this, especially in the music, the insight that was there.
Oh my gosh,
Crystal,
the 60s hippie music was
crystal blue,
amazing.
crystal blue
Amazing.
persuasion, come together. Bob Dylan's music, the times they are changing. This was all poetry. And if you've ever seen the documentary Echoes in the Canyon, what they did was they loved the sound of the Beatles. The Beatles actually introduced new chord progressions, a different way, and harmony, a lot of harmony, where before that was kind of crooners and that type of thing. Everybody was singing love songs and, you know, when we get married, and everybody was getting married out of high school and all
Different kind of love song.
yeah, all of that stuff, romance. Then the music that we had, a little bit of protest, but the real poetic songs are, I appreciate them even more now. Back then I used to just sing them. But now, looking back, we were so on the right track.
Mhm.
And there were the poets and the artists and the songwriters were getting this amazing insight. And so seeing everything that's happening right now, Victoria, I'm understanding that the cabal or the darkness or the enemy, whatever you want to call that other energy, they went, look what's happening. Uh-oh, they're promoting peace and love. Okay, let's get in there with them, but let's make them angry at the soldiers who are coming back. Let's make them angry at them. Those kids that got drafted and thought they were fighting for their country and went through hell and then came home to spitting and degradation and PTSD like never before.
Yep.
And that's, so they introduced hell. They put hell, a huge hell turd right in the middle of the peace and love movement, which was actually stimulated by the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
Because
so that's pretty as you know, you've heard me say before that there's a catalyst that causes an awakening, right?
right,
A lot of times war can be a catalyst that wakes people up. In
right,
that case, what happened, my understanding is in 1963, might have been 62. I hear 63. Some people say 62.
I heard 60.
That's when love came back to the planet. So love was starting to wake up the hearts of humanity. That's when those who were in the contrast went on defense. They went, oh my gosh, love's come back to the planet. So the earth herself sent out a call for help about 50 years ago. That this place is getting too dark. I need help. So love came back to the planet. I mean, that was always part of the plan anyway.
Right.
It just kept getting, I mean, this was prophesied 2,000 years ago that heaven on earth would come back to the planet. So it's nothing is ever just one thing. So love came back to the planet, started flooding back in the early 60s. Then the people who work in the contrast, or the beings who work in the contrast, went on defense. What they do and what they found is incredibly effective when they want to control humanity is to make each other the enemies so they can stay invisible. So they took these kids and they made each other the enemies so that they could stay invisible back here and continue to run the fear-based show. And then they got into the music and they started feeding darkness into the music and changing the frequencies of the music and changing the words of the music. And they got into the music and they created, because they controlled the music industry after that, only people who created dark music were allowed to get music contracts. That's why the music now is so dark.
Oh yeah.
I mean, until the last couple of years, we're now, so their technologies are always backfiring on them. always,
Right.
because
it
human
happens-
beings, right? Well, human beings are creators. You cannot stifle human creativity. That's what they're trying to do right now with some of the stuff that's being in our food and stuff like that,
Right.
is to dumb down our ability to create, because we are creators. That is what we do. That's why communism can't last, because human beings in here, we are creators, and we and have such a desire for freedom that we can't be corralled. So their plans are always failing, because we are God force in human form, right? So we're always creating. And so they tried to control what we can read and what we can see and what we can listen to. This internet was created to it actually was created to spy on humanity, really. I mean, that was the real reason it was allowed to exist, is to be able to spy on us. But it also then allowed us to become more connected, and allowed us to make our own music and not be controlled. It allows us to make our own videos and not be controlled. So now they're trying to figure out how they can censor us, because we're at it, human beings are out of control. We got to figure out how to control us. So they just keep finding new ways to pit us against each other, so that we can't see who's really working behind the scenes.
Right.
Well, what's working behind the scenes in this dark contrast, of course, are these beings who think they can control us. But also what's working behind the scenes is this entire army of angels who are working to liberate us.
And that's what we need to focus on right now, Victoria, because the intel on both sides is so negative.
Yes.
And so people need to get back. Well, the baby boomers. Okay, I'll talk to my generation right now. Hey, baby boomers, go turn on that music and just
go back to
music.
music you listened to when you were teenagers.
Right.
Listen to Bread and to
He ate heavy. He's my brother.
Yeah, all that. What's so
that
funny
was
is that for some reason I've always loved that music, but I think it's because it feeds the soul.
It does feed the soul.
It is soul music.
And it's
time and go back to the before the African music was turned into rap music.
Right.
Because that was created to keep them under control too.
Right.
The African community doesn't realize that music was allowed to be created specifically to keep them under control and to keep them down. That's why they're the only ones that get contracts in the music industry. So, but the music before that, I'm remembering the fourth dimension.
Fifth dimension.
Or the fifth dimension. The fourth dimension.
The fifth
band, the fifth dimension, right?
And
that's amazing.
And who ever heard of the fifth dimension? I never heard of the fifth
in
dimension.
the 1960s.
Exactly.
They were a very spiritual group.
Exactly.
They talked about they were singing about what's happening right now.
When the moon is in the seventh.
Yeah. And what's so funny is that we locked into the Age of Aquarius on December 21st, 2020.
This is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius.
And I watched that video. I'm like, man, these people are so cool. We need to go back and bring that music back to life.
That's what
reignite the hearts of the baby boomers, because right now baby boomers are very disheartened, and for good reason, because what's happening on the planet right now is attacking them specifically.
Yes, it is.
The controllers want to get rid of all of the baby boomers sooner than later, because you're the ones who remember freedom, and you're the ones who remember love, and you're the ones who remember what it was when we were fighting against communism, right? So they want anybody who can remember that to just disappear. They want anyone who's using Social Security and Medicare to disappear, because and I was having this conversation a couple of weeks ago. Do you remember about 20 years ago, they were saying that Social Security is going to run out of money. What are we going to do? Social Security is going to run out of money. Well, the simple solution is, well, you just knock off everybody that's on Social Security. Then there's plenty of money, right? So there is an agenda right now specifically against the baby boomers. So the baby boomers have got to get their hearts back open again. Pull out that amazing music. Pull out that inner hippie, right? That says, not on my watch is this going to happen.
Right.
That, okay, so this is an example of where there isn't a past and a present and a future. The past exists within every single one of us. We just have to pull it back out and remember aspects of it. So there are aspects of our past that I know human beings don't want to remember. And you know what? We got to deal with those. We have to process all of our pain stories. That's what 4D is all about, is processing the pain stories. It's also about pulling out all those things that we loved from back then and bringing them back out and reactivating them. The baby boomer generation needs to reactivate its activism.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And music is, they knew this back in the days of Socrates, how powerful music is.
Oh yeah, music is used to program people. Why do you think they put
Exactly.
jingles behind commercials?
Exactly. But
Why do you think that we have all this music in church? It's the same thing. Not that it's bad. I mean, spiritual music, religious music is beautiful.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And it is also a form of programming.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. And
so we have to be really, really careful what we consciously choose to program ourselves with.
Mhm.
And the music that's out right now is programming pain and suffering and anger and blame and resentment. And those are all based in fear. It's programming fear into the collective consciousness. We choose what we program ourselves with.
right, that's exactly
So when we turn on the news, we're being programmed. When we watch these dystopian movies, I was trying to find the right word for it. When we watch these dystopian movies, that's what we're being programmed with. And those who consider themselves to be the controllers, again, pick the name, those who work on the behalf of the contrast, know how easy it is to program the human mind. And I think we talked about this before, where the human mind is so powerful, it can create simply by thought. Yeah. And it is so malleable that it can easily be programmed. So we need to get to the point where we understand, I am a sovereign being. No one has the right to tell me what I can and can't do with my mind, with my heart, with my body. This is mine. It belongs solely and wholly to me as a divine being having a human experience. Nobody gets to tell me what to do with my body and with my mind and with my spirit and with my heart.
That's right.
We have to consciously choose what we do with this vessel that we've been given.
You know,
and watch what we get programmed with. Watch what we feed our bodies.
Right.
Watch who we put in our fields.
Right.
Right. We have to learn to go back and take ownership of our sovereign vessel. Right. And be completely conscious and aware of everything that we put into it. And a lot of people don't do that. They're just living life by default in this fear-based reality. And so they're getting pummeled with all this fear-based programming because they're not holding themselves in this conscious sovereignty of I am divinity having a human experience. I am soul having a human experience. I am spirit having a human experience. I am divine love having a human experience. I am a multi-dimensional being having a human experience. And nobody gets to tell me what my experience is or has the right to manipulate my experience.
That's right. That's right.
We got to remember that.
I'm getting
so in your case, in the baby boomers case, it's about going back to that music. Going back to that music when love was coming back to the planet, and the love bugs and the love buses and the music and that whole, we got to get it together. We got to unify, and we're here to be the change in the world, and we're going to end war and peace, love, peace, not war, love, and reignite that in your hearts.
Exactly.
Got to be reignited. Well, in my case, I go back to the early 80s because that was my music, and we had the punk music that was like rage against the machine. It wasn't about being angry at each other. It was about understanding that there's this machine that's trying to control us, the war machine. Like, we knew that in the 80s, and like, I mean, it was much more angry.
Bringing it to attention.
Yeah. It was
this is what we've been talking about. When you bring that to attention, then you make it real, and then it grows.
Yes.
It grows. You got to go back to your idealistic thinking or idealistic music. One that just keeps hitting me in the face right now is joy to the world, all you boys and girls.
Yes.
Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. And then when you sing that in unity, that is incredibly powerful. When there's a saying that I think it was St. Anthony said, he who sings prays twice, because what's happening, I can tell you joy to the world, or I can say joy to the world. And
all the boys and girls.
Exactly.
Joy to the fishes in the deep blue sea. Joy to you and me. Hallelujah. Joy to the world. Right? You can't not smile when you sing that song. And if you listen, you can actually, this is what people need to understand. When you sing that song, you can actually feel it vibrating in your heart.
Yes.
You can feel it in your heart.
Victoria, I bought 4 pairs of bell bottoms, and all weekend I played that music. I was
we need to have a revival. Oh my gosh, we need a revival.
Oh no, I'm working on that.
Like a Woodstock revival, right?
I'm working on it right now. Yeah, and because music is so powerful. And I'm actually writing songs like those songs from back in the 60s. I'm actually, the Spirit's been giving me these songs. It's funny, isn't it, that when Spirit speaks through you, or when you understand how to be a conduit to the love energy, to God, like you do when you're speaking,
when I'm writing,
when you're writing and when you're teaching, that comes to me musically. And when it happens, it's like, phew, and I'll sit at the piano, and it's written within 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's what they call a spiritual download. You just download it differently.
And mine comes musically. And I'm so passionate about that right now, because baby boomers are still in charge of at least economy. And the way we know that is look at the commercials that are on television. Depends. Lots of medicine. Viagra. Right. Oh, exactly. All of these commercials cater to the baby boomers. So baby boomers are still in charge of our economy in so many ways, because young people are living with their parents and still.
Right. So here's the thing that I was just getting. The baby boomers need to reactivate that inner hippie, right? And remember, not on our watch.
That's
because here's the thing I was trying to explain to my daughter. My daughter's my kids are Gen Z. Okay. They're being told that the baby boomers are the reason the planet's the mess that it is. She said and this is what they say. Every generation leaves a huge mess. Listen, and they have a point. Every generation leaves a mess for the next generation to clear up. If you go back to your hippie, when you were a teenager, you were saying the same thing. The older generation leaves a mess for us to clean up. So that's what they're saying. The baby boomer generation made a mess that now the kids have to clean up. And what I told my daughter, as I said, not this time. I said, this time we are going to clean up the mess and we're going to leave the world a better place. We're not going to stick you guys with our mess. The baby boomers have got to dig the hippie back out and understand they're the ones that have the money to be able to clean up the mess.
Exactly.
So that the kids, who are these incredible geniuses, have the ability to create the inventions and the changes that are going to make the new world. They have the ideas, they have the fresh new ideas. They don't have the money. The baby boomers and Gen X, they have the money.
Right.
We have to stop seeing each other as enemies. The Gen Z and the baby boomers are saying, oh, kids these days are blah, 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 right? They're calling the kids the reason there's a problem in the world. The kids are saying the old people are the reason there's a problem in the world. We have got to unify and understand. If we're going to change the world, the baby boomers and Gen X have to understand they're financially capable of changing the world. And all these kids who are brilliant don't have the funding to change the world.
We're going
to work together. That inner hippie's got to come out in the older
generation. Absolutely. Well,
you know what? We're going to go back and we're going to change the world.
And
get off your couches, turn off the televisions,
crank up the music,
turn the music on, start dancing in the streets.
Woo. That's another song. Dancing in the street.
That's from the 80s. It's like the music that I was dancing to.
Oh, well,
all around the world. So we have to stop blaming each other. That's exactly what those who work in the contrast want. Those who work in the contrast want us blaming each other so that we are disempowered.
That's right.
If we remember how powerful we are, and we are the ones who have the financial capacity, we take back our power and we change the world. We've been saying we're the ones we've been waiting for since the 1960s. We've been saying be the change we want to see in the world since the 1960s.
That's right.
It's time to stop the lip service and put our money where our mouths are.
Right.
Put our energy where our mouths are, and show the younger generation that we're going to fix it so they can actually get to work and make this world a better place.
And
incredible. And these kids are star seeds.
The new ones
are ordinary human beings.
The new ones, my grandchildren. Yeah. I mean, they blow me away. You're exactly
right. My daughter's an embodied angel. I know that for a fact, right? She used to tell me when she was a little girl, oh, I would go play with my angel friends all the time. When she said, when I sleep, I would play with my angel friends. When she was little, she told me, Mommy, I'm here to be like a light in a dark cave.
Aww.
She knew she was here to be a light worker. We need to create the space for all these little light workers to do their work. They need us, the older generations, to make it possible for them. Yeah. But right now, they're being blamed for being all these delinquents. And it's like, they're not delinquents. They're teenagers, just the way you guys were when you were 20 years old and wanted to change the world. And we're that age. So what happens, what the contrast does is they take that energy, that I'm a warrior, that warrior energy that's inside these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, and they send them to war. Okay. They harness that energy. We have to recognize that's an incredibly powerful transformational energy. Yes. And focus it into peace movements instead of war movements. Focus it into really making the world a better place. Knowing, again, this goes back to the younger generation, knowing they can trust the older generation to help them out. Because right now they're only seeing the older generation as the enemy, and the older generation is only seeing the younger generation as the enemy. We got to stop seeing ourselves as the enemies and come together.
Music can unify, Victoria.
Music can unify. We have to come together in unity.
And the best example of that I like to share is when you go to a football game and everybody's singing the national anthem. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as that song's over, whew, boom, two separate play ball, let's go get them, So, and that feeling, everybody has experienced that feeling of the power of the unity, and then the separation, that instant separation right after the song.
So we have to create global anthems. See, I'm a little bit unique in that I don't see the separation of one country. I am not here for the freedom of America. I'm here for the freedom of planet
of
Earth.
the planet. I don't see borders. My favorite.
I don't see borders
Those-
because this is one humanity.
Yes.
We are all one humanity. And if one country is free and another country isn't, we're still divided.
Exactly.
We have to liberate humanity from the dark side. We bring out Star Wars, if you will, right?
The separation. My favorite maps are the ones that have no borders. You know, those big ones that are that show the map, the Earth all spread out, and there's no borders.
You see mountains and you see rivers and you see oceans and
the oceans.
No borders.
That's what I see. And I remember I was at Marianne Williamson's home, and she was starting this thing, and she was showing this map, and she says, "What do you see when you see this part?" You know, and she would point to China or the United States, and what kind of emotion do you feel, and all that stuff. And when it came to me, I said, "I see a big." Well, at that time, I said Disneyland, a place, the happy place. That's what Disneyland was supposed to be.
Right.
A happy place
for most people,
where we all dance and sing together in harmony, and we enjoy each other's culture, and we celebrate each other's different cuisines and different music and different costumes. And we go, "Oh, isn't that cool?" And we don't, you know, one thing about racism or separateness, when you say something about the Black race or the Asian race, every time I'm supposed to fill out one of those forms that say, "What race are you?" I always say other. I'm not going to.
And then type in and then put in human race.
I do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been doing that since the 70s.
Yeah.
I always put other. And now there's like how much of a choice?
Because they're trying to divide us, divided and conquered. That they create as many labels as you can possibly create to keep human beings divided and separated. Because if we unify, we can topple everything, and that terrifies the controllers. Well, when the ants all get together, we can bring down the ant bully, right? So they're terrified of us ever finding our true power. So the more labels and ways they can create to divide us and separate us and keep us fighting against each other, then they can play out their little game back here behind the scenes without us even knowing what they're doing, because we're so busy fighting amongst ourselves.
You know,
and we have to stop falling for that.
You know, one thing,
the narrative that was created to keep us fighting against
exactly. God, I'm so excited right now. One thing that I told my dad, and something to remember, when people are saying, "Oh, don't say that, it's offensive to the Black race," or that's, you know, we can't have the Chihuahua dog anymore at Taco Bell because that's offensive to the Mexican race or whatever. Well, what you're doing when you do that is you are amplifying the white race, because you're saying that there's something wrong with these other ones, and they can't help it. They were born Black or Hispanic. There is nothing wrong with being Black. Seriously. There is nothing wrong with that. But it's interesting. I asked my dad one time, well, all of this stuff was going on with Trump, and they all think he's so arrogant. I said, "You know, Dad, who said I'm the greatest? Do you remember who said I'm the greatest?" And Daddy said, "Yeah, Muhammad Ali." And I said, "Right. Why did that not make anybody mad?" And when Trump, I'm pumped up. That's where that came from. But when Trump says I'm the greatest, I did this and I'm the greatest, why does that make people angry?
But it didn't make white man. Right? Yeah.
It did not make anybody angry when Muhammad Ali said it, but it makes it because it's so obvious. Daddy said because he's Black, and I said yes. And there's this attitude with society, when the truth is, in spiritual eyes, in the eyes of God, they are equal.
We're all equal.
We're all equal.
Right.
There is nothing. We're all equal. We are all beautiful light beings, spirits that are having this human experience. And you can either do it dancing in the light, or you can do it being buried in the darkness. And
I would say that grumbling in the darkness.
No.
Yeah.
And that's
And there will come a time in this new reality we're creating, there will come a time when all those labels just cease to exist.
absolutely.
And we will all just see each other as we will all just recognize, the term namaste. It is such a beautiful term.
Yes.
What it means is the divine in me recognizes the divine in you.
It is.
That's it.
It's it.
And we will come a time when all those labels will cease to exist and we will all simply recognize each other as divinity having a human experience. And that's it.
Okay, so let's do this, Victoria. I'll do the music, you do the teaching, and we'll start our little thing.
We'll start doing some global anthems.
And well,
Joy to the world. I'm like, that in itself to me is a global anthem, right? And there's so many of these songs that have been written that actually are all about unity and the world and coming together. And
right.
we got to dig all that stuff back out.
Well, I'm coming to Redondo.
It's so funny. I'm seeing this, dust off the LPs.
Yeah. Well, I'm coming to Redondo in May. And I did this once with my folks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my guitar down to the beach and we're going to get people to sing with us. I
think that is a beautiful idea.
That's what we're going to do. We'll gather people together.
And I think it's just, I can see it being organic where you're playing and singing. And then the next thing you know, there's thousands of people singing on the beach because people cannot resist music. Oh, no. Oh, absolutely. It's magnetic. And what we can do is we'll just sing like Joy to the World. We'll just keep singing it as a mantra. We don't need to know all of the verses. Just the part that everybody knows. Everybody sings. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Yeah, we'll do the choruses and we'll do them as mantras. And we'll just. Well, we can sing Joy to the World in between the other songs. Yeah. Okay. So then, okay. Are you getting excited? So yeah, there is a spot right there at the bottom of the stairs on Avenue C. See what I'm talking about? Right there at the bottom of the stairs underneath the Veterans Park. Oh, Veterans Park, yeah. There's actually electricity. There's I've seen people like get up there like the preacher. We could just sit up there and play music. I'll bring my sound system. I've got one out there. Bring your sound system. We'll play music. We'll start singing. And all the people that come to the pier, all the people that come to the beach, they will all start gathering and singing along. We will sing. We will sing. And we'll start singing, and then the news crew is going to show up, and they'll start taking video, and it's going to turn into a movement. It's going back. Okay. I'm so ready. Music causes people to move. It's going to turn into a movement. So ready for this. I'm going to help with the programming. And hopefully we don't need a permit, but if we need a permit, then we'll get one. I don't think we need a permit if we're not collecting money. I think you're right. Yeah. And it's a perfect little stage. I don't know if you've seen it. You know what I'm talking about? I know right where it is. I know exactly where that is because every time I walk by there, I see that plug and I see the stage. Yeah, there was somebody up there a couple of months ago who was preaching something. I was like, "What? I didn't even know that." No, it's got to be. We got to do music. I know my friends that I can invite, and we'll just start a thing. I have some friends I can invite too. We'll put the word out. That's what we'll do. We'll do a little do a music, spreading the joy. We are going to have a revival. Yes. Yes, we are. Have a revival. Okay, everybody. So we're going to conclude this now because we've been doing this for an hour and we could probably do it for 3 or 4 more hours. I can go get my guitar and really get going here. But we can. I have a client session in a half hour. I got to get ready for. Well, so thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Victoria and I because you heard it today. We're starting a movement, okay? We'll call it, how about Hippie-licious? No, actually, I think what I want to call my group and call the movement is just feeling groovy.
Feeling
I love that. Feeling groovy.
groovy, feeling
Yeah, all that happy
We're-
music and remind people that it's good to be alive and
slow down.
activate those hearts again.
You move.
And what's great about that music
Uh-huh.
is a lot of the younger generation. Now, here's something you might not know, and then we do need to have to go. That a lot of the children's movies
Yeah.
right now
Yes.
feature that music. So a lot of the kids actually know these songs.
Yeah.
But my kids are funny because I'll start singing a song. Oh, that's from the movie Despicable Me. I'm like, actually, it's not. But I think they put it in there because it's old enough that the royalties, that's not as expensive as paying somebody for a new song.
Well,
The
it's
song's like 50
75.
years old.
It's 75. I think it's to appeal to the baby boomer grandmothers or whatever. To
Well,
take
and not
the
only
kids
that,
to-
and to the parents, because then because it's nostalgia, right? So we're going to see these kids shows, but they've been trying to make these kids animated movies more relevant to their parents. So there's a lot of adult humor in there that the kids don't get. My kids will go back now and watch movies when they were little and they're like, oh my gosh, now we know why you and dad were laughing. Because there's a lot of adult humor in these kids' cartoons that the little kids don't see. They just like the cartoons and they like the music. And but they have this great nostalgia music that's in there for the adults.
Exactly.
And but a lot of the younger generation knows these songs. So as you're playing this music, it's going to be everybody from
music's going to bridge.
80 is going to recognize the music.
We're going to build a bridge. We're going
to build a bridge.
That's it.
We have to build bridges. I've been seeing that for the last 2 years. I've been calling it bridging the divide. We have to create bridges.
Let's do it.
And wake up the hearts of humanity.
I love you.
I love you too. Can't wait to see you again in a few weeks.
Me too. And we need to see Children of Angels. Bye, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
We'll be here
See you next week.
Yes.